Hello everyone and welcome to a new video of your Polyglot Academy. Now in this video I'm going to continue the series on how to learn German up to a B1 level with 1,000 words, and today I'm going to cover lesson number 6 with the words including from 501 to 600. So let's dive into it. Now the first word of today is pleite, which means broke. Here's an example. Ist schon wieder pleite. He's broke again. Next expression is töten, which means to kill. Here's an example. Die Jäger töten das Tier. The hunters kill the animal. Following on, we have der Sohn, which means son. Hat einen Sohn und eine Tochter. He has a son and a daughter. Now we have der See, which means lake. Der See ist sehr tief. The lake is very deep. Now we have laut, which means loud. Die Musik ist zu laut. The music is too loud. Following on, we have der Frühling, which means spring. Der Frühling beginnt im März. Spring begins in March. Gerade means straight or just. Die Straße ist ganz gerade. The street is completely straight. Now we have die Nation, which means the nation, and here's an example. Deutschland ist eine Nation in Europa. Germany is a nation in Europe. Now we have das Wörterbuch, which means dictionary, and here's an example. Ich benutze ein Wörterbuch im Unterricht. I use a dictionary in class. Now we have die Milch, which means milk. Das Kind trinkt Milch. The child drinks milk. Now we have die Geschwindigkeit, which means speed. Das Auto fährt mit hoher Geschwindigkeit. The car drives at high speed. Now, word 512 is going to be das Verfahren, which means the method with process. Das Verfahren ist kompliziert. The method is complicated. Now we have zahlen, which means to pay. Ich muss die Rechnung zahlen. I have to pay the bill. Now we have das Alter, which means age, and here's an example. Ist im Alter von 16 Jahren. He is at the age of 16. Der Abschnitt, which means section, is the next word. Lies den ersten Abschnitt des Textes. Read the first section of the text. Now we have das Kleid, which means dress. Sie trägt ein schönes Kleid. She's wearing a beautiful dress. Now we have die Wolke, which means cloud, and here's an example. Am Himmel ist nur eine Wolke. There is only one cloud in the sky. Now we have Überraschung, which means surprise. Die Party war eine große Überraschung. The party was a big surprise. Now we have ruhig, which means quiet. Das Meer ist heute ruhig. The sea is quiet today. Following on, we have winzig, which means tiny. Die Maus ist winzig. The mouse is tiny. Now we have kühlen, which means to cool. Der Wind kühlt die Luft. The wind cools the air. Following on, we have der Entwurf, which means design or draft. Der Architekt zeigte einen Entwurf. The architect showed his design. Now we have arm, which means poor. Ist arm, aber glücklich. He's poor but happy. Next up, we have die Menge, which means lots or amount. Eine große Menge Leute war da. A large number of people were there. Now we have der Versuch, which means experiment or attempt. Der Versuch war erfolgreich. The experiment was successful. Now we have der Boden, which means bottom or ground. Der Schlüssel liegt auf dem Boden. The key is on the ground. Following on, we have der Schlüssel, which means key. Ich habe meinen Schlüssel verloren. I lost my key. Now we have das Eisen, which means iron. Das Tor ist aus Eisen. The gate is made of iron. Following up, we have die Wohnung, which means flat or apartment. Meine Wohnung ist im 3. Stock. My flat is on the 3rd floor. Now we have die Haut, which means skin, and here's an example. Ihre Haut ist sehr weich. Her skin is very soft. Now we have das Loch, which means hole, and here's an example. Es gibt ein Loch im Boden. There is a hole in the ground. Now we have springen, which means to jump. Der Hund kann hoch springen. The dog can jump high. Following on, we have 8, which means 8. 8 Schüler fehlen heute. 8 students are missing today. Now we have das Dorf, which means village, and here's an example. Mein Dorf ist sehr klein. My village is very small. Following up, we have treffen, which means to meet. Wir treffen uns morgen. We will meet tomorrow. Now we have die Wurzel, which means root. Die Pflanze hat eine tiefe Wurzel. The plant has a deep root. Now word 537 is going to be kaufen, which means to buy. Ich möchte ein Buch kaufen. I want to buy a book. Now we have erhöhen, which means to raise or to increase. Wir müssen die Preise erhöhen. We have to raise the prices. Next up, we have lösen, which means to solve, and here's an example. Sie können das Problem lösen. They can solve the problem. Now we have das Metall, which means metal. Das Messer ist aus Metall. The knife is made of metal. Ob, which means whether or if. Fragt, ob es stimmt. He asks whether that is true. Drücken means to push or to press. Bitte den Knopf drücken. Please press the button. Now we have sieben, which means 7. 7 Tage hat die Woche. A week is 7 days. Now we have der Absatz, which means paragraph. Schreibe einen neuen Absatz. Write a new paragraph. Das Haar, which means hair, is the next word. Ihr Haar ist sehr lang. Her hair is very long. Beschreiben means to describe. Kannst du das Bild beschreiben? Can you describe the picture? Now we have kochen, which means to cook. Sagt, dass gut kochen kann. He says that he can cook well. Now we have entweder, which means either. Entweder du kommst oder du bleibst zu Hause. Either you come or you stay at home. Now we have das Ergebnis, which means the result. Das Ergebnis war überraschend. The result was surprising. Now we have brennen, which means to burn. Das Feuer brennt stark. The fire burns strongly. Next up, die Katze, which means cat. Die Katze schläft auf dem Sofa. The cat sleeps on the sofa. Now we have das Jahrhundert, which means century. Das 20. Jahrhundert war voller Veränderungen. The 20th century was full of changes. Now we have betrachten, which means to consider or to look at. Man muss die Fakten genau betrachten. One must consider the facts carefully. Now we have der Typ, which means type or guy. Das ist nicht mein Typ. That's not my type. Following up, we have das Gesetz, which means the law. Das neue Gesetz ist streng. The new law is strict. Now we have die Küste, which means coast. Wir machen Urlaub an der Küste. We are spending our holiday on the coast. Die Kopie means copy. Bitte machen Sie eine Kopie. Please make a copy. Der Ausdruck means phrase or expression. Schwarzer Humor ist ein Ausdruck. Dark humor is a phrase. Next up, we have still, which means silent. Die Klasse war plötzlich still. The class suddenly became silent. Now, word 560, we have der Sand, which means sand. Die Kinder spielen im Sand. The children play in the sand. Now we have die Rolle, which means role. Spielt eine wichtige Rolle. He plays an important role. Now we have die Temperatur, which means temperature. Die Temperatur ist heute sehr hoch. The temperature is very high today. Now we have der Finger, which means finger. Hat sich den Finger geschnitten. He cut his finger. Next up we have die Industrie, which means industry. Die Autoindustrie ist groß in Deutschland. The car industry is big in Germany. Now word 565 is going to be der Wert, which means value. Das Haus hat einen hohen Wert. The house is a high value. Now we have der Kampf, which means fight. Der Kampf war kurz. The fight was short. Now we have die Lüge, which means lie from the verb to lügen. Diese Geschichte ist eine Lüge. The story is a lie. Now we have schlagen, which means to beat or to hit. Kann den Rekord schlagen. He can beat the record. Now we have begeistern, which means to excite or to inspire. Das Konzert begeisterte die Fans. The concert excited the fans. Next up we have natürlich, which means natural. Holz ist ein natürliches Material. Wood is a natural material. Now we have der Blick, which means view or glance. Von hier hat man einen tollen Blick. From here you have a great view. Next up we have der Sinn, which means sense or meaning. Das macht keinen Sinn. That makes no sense. Now we have die Hauptstadt, which means capital. Berlin ist die Hauptstadt von Deutschland. Berlin is the capital of Germany. Now we have der Stuhl, which means chair, and here's an example. Der Stuhl ist aus Holz. The chair is made of wood. Now we have Achtung, which means danger or attention. Achtung, das ist gefährlich. Attention, that is dangerous. Now we have das Obst, which means fruit. Obst ist gesund. fruit is healthy. Now we have reich, which means rich. Ist ein sehr reicher Mann. He's a very rich man. Following up, we have dick, which means thick or fat. Das Buch ist sehr dick. The book is very thick. Now we have der Soldat, which means soldier, and here's an example. Der Soldat marschiert. The soldier marches. Now we have der Prozess, which means process. Der Prozess dauert lange. The process takes a long time. Now we have betreiben, which means to operate or to run. Sie betreiben ein Restaurant. They operate a restaurant. Now we have die Praxis, which means practice or doctor's office. Sie arbeitet in einer Arztpraxis. She works in a doctor's office. Next up we have trennen, which means to separate. Man sollte den Müll trennen. You should separate the trash. Now we got schwierig, which means difficult. Diese Aufgabe ist sehr schwierig. This task is very difficult. Now we have der Arzt, which means doctor. Der Arzt untersucht den Patienten. The doctor examines the patient. Now we have die Bitte, which means please or request. Ich habe eine Bitte an dich. I have a request for you. Now we have schützen, which means to protect. Eine Jacke schützt vor Kälte. A jacket protects against cold. Now we have der Mittag, which means noon. Wir essen Mittag. We eat at noon. Now word 589 is going to be die Ernte, which means the crop or the harvest. Die Ernte war dieses Jahr gut. The crop was good this year. Next up we have modern, which means modern. Das Haus ist sehr modern. The house is very modern. Now we got das Element, which means element. Sauerstoff ist ein chemisches Element. Oxygen is a chemical element. Now we have der Schüler, which means student or pupil. Der Schüler macht seine Hausaufgaben. Student does his homework. Now we have die Ecke, which means corner. Der Laden ist an der Ecke. The shop is on the corner. Now we got die Partei, which means political party. Die Partei gewann die Wahl. The party won the election. Now, die Versorgung means supply. Die Versorgung mit Wasser ist wichtig. The supply of water is important. Next up we have lokalisieren, which means to locate. Wir müssen das Problem lokalisieren. We must locate the problem. Now we got der Ring, which means ring. Trägt einen goldenen Ring. He wears a golden ring. Now we have der Charakter, which means character. Sein Charakter ist freundlich. His character is friendly. Next up, das Insekt, which means insect. Eine Biene ist ein Insekt. A bee is an insect. And now finally, word number 600, fangen, which means to catch. And here's an example. Der Junge kann den Ball fangen. The boy can catch the ball. So this was the last word today. I hoped you understood everything and I hoped also that you enjoyed the lesson. If you have any questions or whatsoever, feel free to write a comment or to reach me personally. And other than that, thanks for watching. Have a nice day. If you have any wishes, once again, write them in the comments and I wish you a nice day. See you soon. Goodbye.